Our old friend Rick Perry, governor of the great state of Texas, is on the line with us. Governor Perry, how are you, sir?
Awesome. Everything's good in South Carolina.
It's good to talk to you. Well, you heard Governor Romney. You're now a witness for the Obama prosecution. Your reaction?
Yeah, well, here's the issue, and it's one that I think is good for the Republican Party to have, and certainly the people of South Carolina that have been I guess they get the results of some of Bain Capital's activities back through the years. You know, private equity firms and their Wall Street financiers, they're not the emergency room doctors, if you will, of capitalism. They don't go looking for half-dead companies to save. Instead, they look for companies with little or no debt and generally in undervalued types of industries, and then they come in, they buy those companies, and they finance the purchase with huge amounts of debt, kind of like a mortgage, and you pay 5% down, and then you make the payments for a little while, and you sell the house and keep all the profits yourself, and that's problematic from my perspective. We ought to be about venture capitalists that are coming in, creating jobs, and being part of a really positive process of creating jobs. And this president that we have currently today, he's got huge problems from the standpoint of his tax policy, his regulatory policy. He has driven America into a ditch. But my concern is that we've given him some opportunity. And listen, this is something we need to talk about now, not in September, from the standpoint of these private equity firms that target these companies that are at risk, and then they pull out huge amounts of these management fees and then let the companies die on the vine. How about helping them stay in business? How about being a
well, I think they did that, right?
Outfit?
They did that for a number of these firms, and in fact, if Bain Capital hadn't come in to a number of these companies, the companies would have indeed gone out of business. So,
well, they went out of business anyway, and
not all of them.
Is that Bain, not all of them, and I agree. But my point is that there are some out there that are going to be pointed out, and that was what we were doing. This is a process that the equity stripping of these companies, and there's a bigger issue here, Laura, and it's just this corrupt relationship between Washington D.C. And Wall Street. It's the TARP bailout. It was the stimulus program. It was the $7.7 trillion that got transferred from our Treasury over to these Wall Street banks, and Americans have lost confidence in both of those institutions, and that's what this conversation is really about. Are we going to allow an insider to come in who has made their living on Wall Street, or for that matter, Newt or Rick or Ron Paul as insiders in Washington, D.C., who have been, prolific either earmarkers or individuals who have used the individual mandates, of which Newt was for, and then Mitt put into law, and then Obama copied and gave us Obamacare. And are we going to bring an outsider in who has none of that baggage, has none of that, only 11 years of running the 13th largest economy in the world and being a job creator? That's what Texas is the question.
Yeah, and Texas's record in attracting business to the state is exemplary. This is an incredible record. There's no doubt about it. And we've been trumpeting that for years on this program, from healthcare companies, biotech firms, obviously in traditional energy firms as well, and the policies that encourage these companies to come into the state. However, Gov, when you take out that slingshot on Bain Capital, I'm going to raise the issue of Texans for Public Justice. Their analysis of your campaign contributions since 2000, you have received more than $7 million from private equity firms and private investment firms. Are any of those vulture firms?
I didn't paint with a broad brush and say that every private equity firm out there is
only
bad.
Only Romneys are vultures? None of your guys are vultures, only Romneys?
Look, Romney's running for president, and his record is...
Yeah, you're running for president too, and you've benefited from these firms.
And I don't have a problem with that. The fact is, I have put a state on track to create jobs like no one in this country Mitt Romney, while he was the governor of Massachusetts, not only raised taxes by 20%, but he also led his state to 47th in the nation in job creation. I mean, when he had the opportunity to go into the public sector, his private sector experience didn't pay off very well, and that's the point that I've been making for some time. We're very different candidates from how we grew up to what we did in our young adult lives to the public service side of things. I've always been pro-life. I've always been pro-Second Amendment. I've always been an individual that was for traditional marriage. I've always been a person who was a skeptic about global warming. And Mitt and I are very different. And that's the reason we have campaigns. That's the reason we bring these issues to the forefront. If Mitt is if this is a fatal flaw for Mitt, let me put it that way, it's a whole lot better we have this conversation in January than in September.
But has your team vetted your own donations that you've received from all of these private equity firms to ensure that none of their transactions have been equally as vulturistic?
My record has been vetted for 11 years on a pretty regular basis. So my point is that
I have no problem with you getting money from these firms. I think it's fine. Yeah. I don't have any problem with it whatsoever.
Yeah. And my point is that the Republican Party needs to be about creating jobs, not about putting policies in place. But
are you concerned that Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all these other people, Governor Perry, are kind of using what you and Gingrich say about Romney and running with it? That doesn't concern you at all, given the fact that, look, the smart money's on Romney being the nominee, and it might not happen, but if it does happen, are you concerned that you will have given them perhaps more fodder? That's what Jim DeMint was worried about yesterday on this broadcast.
Well, anybody that thinks that this administration and their political team's not going to have this information and probably had it a long time before it was brought up by us as being quite naive. And my point is, if this is a fatal flaw, as I said earlier, it's better to talk about it in January than it is in September, because I can promise you that the opposition is going to have all of these kind of issues at hand. And again, the Republican Party needs to be talking about being job creators. This administration, this president, he is a job killer. 2 million jobs been lost while he's been the president of the United States, and there's no indication that it's going to get any better. We need to have energy policy that's making our country domestic energy dependent. He won't even build a pipeline that the Teamsters Union wants to build because he's so in bed with his left-wing environmental community, and he's just interested in the next election, not the next generation.
We're talking to Governor Rick Perry here on the Laura Ingraham Show, and Governor, your old pal Herman Cain was out there on my old pal Don Imus's radio show yesterday. Let's listen.
Let's take Rick Perry's campaign.
Please.
He started out with a lot of hoopla, and it wasn't deserved because the media as well as the establishment wanted to make him a foregone superstar. As soon as he got in the race and he had to debate, people found out that he had very weak debating skills. He wasn't very deep on any of the issues and this sort of thing.
You're being kind.
I'm trying to be respectful.
Well, what do you make of old Cain coming back and taking the swipes?
Well, if what Americans are looking for is a good debater, we got one of those in the White House, and that's not working very well for us. If you want somebody that's got a record of job creation, 11 years of operating the 13th largest economy in the world, I'll put my record up against whether it's a Pisa magnet or whether it's the President of the United States. Nobody has that record of being able to work within the system of a major entity like the state of Texas. And I hope Herman doesn't think that running Godfather Pizza is the same as running the state of Texas.
I mean, 999. I mean, he's just waiting. You see, Governor, all you need to do is sign on to 999, and then he'd be saying nice things about you. So that's just the way it goes with Herman Cain.
I don't suspect he's going to be saying nice things about me because 999 is not a policy that's going to help America. It's basically going to create new taxes. And, people look at our flat tax at 20%, and they go, you know what, getting rid of the IRS as we know it and have a simple flat tax
makes a
lot of sense, not creating a new tax, of which 999 does.
I'm looking at these Ron Paul numbers in Iowa, and of course then in New Hampshire, Governor Perry, and you obviously didn't come in where you wanted to come in either of these states. But why do you think his support is growing, and yet social conservatives, you and Rick Santorum, and to some extent Newt Gingrich, are kind of all splitting that vote? Yet Paul is seeing something of a little surge here. Why is that?
I think it'll be interesting to see how he does in South Carolina, where you actually have a clear Republican primary process. Both Iowa's caucus is a very quirky process. Matter of fact, a number of people who came to vote there were, admittedly Democrats who came to vote for Ron Paul. So, but we'll just have to wait and see here on the 21st. I happen to think the voters of South Carolina, they get it. They're looking for somebody who's got the executive governing experience of running a state and creating jobs and pushing back on Washington D.C. They're sick of Washington coming into their state, telling them how to. For instance, the Justice Department here is pushing back on their state's ability to have a voter identification law. On the immigration law that they passed. And then this Boeing debacle was, that is as onerous as we've seen out of Washington, D.C. When I talk about a part-time Congress and cutting these congressmen's pay and time that they spend in Washington, sending them back home, letting them get a real job and work under the laws that they pass and live within their constituents, it's the biggest applause line that I have. In passing a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution, people are just fed up with Washington's consolidation of power, and as the bigger Washington gets, the smaller their liberties get.
Hey, Governor, if you don't win in South Carolina, is it time to wrap it up or say, look, Newt, Rick, let's three of us sit down in a room together. Let's pool our remaining resources and our support, and let's try to let's pick one of us and be the anti-Romney candidate. Is it time to do that? You're up 5% now in the latest poll in South Carolina. Obviously things can change. It's just a snapshot. But what if?
Well, as you said, it's just a snapshot, and we're not looking past South Carolina other than we look forward to going to Florida.
So you do not win in South Carolina. You still anticipate going on to Florida?
We'll wait till the 21st and make those decisions then. But we're having great response and good crowds here, so I'm pretty excited about what we're going to see happen. A lot of veterans that are standing up, and including Medal of Honor recipients from South Carolina.
I saw that.
The guy that we want to be our commander-in-chief. So there's a lot of time left, and as you know, these campaigns are turning on a dime.
Yeah, and I had an idea that I floated earlier, and you just might want to think about it the next debate, Governor. Just show up with a vulture. You know how they have those falconeers that have the falcons? You can just have the vulture on your arm, and they can just maybe paint mitt on it, just paint on the feathers, then
Laura,
release it into the crowd.
You've never been around vultures before. You don't want one sitting on your arm.
Oh, darn!
They have some bad habits that it doesn't go well.
Well, they do serve an important purpose in the ecology of the world, though, Governor. Come on.
I guess from that standpoint they do, but I'm still gonna be about creating jobs, not killing jobs.
Oh, we appreciate it, Governor Rick Perry. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Look forward to getting back on again.
All right, you take care, Governor Perry on the Laura Ingraham Show.